Do you think that means we are live? Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. It's Friday, right?
Yes,
Okay,
definitely
good.
Friday.
Please don't tell me. Please don't tell me if it's not Friday. Happy Friday. Welcome to the AP Lit Review. We're excited to be here again on this beautiful Friday in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Susan Barber from Grady High School. And I'm so excited because today, I think, is the first official day that my students are joining us. They've been working on some other things. I have about 120 AP Lit kids. And so they are logging on and watching today. So, guys, I mean, I've been in touch with y'all. I love you. But so glad that you're with us. Here in this space today. And let me give a shout out to a few other classes. Mr. Nagowski's class from Gadsden County High School in Havana, Florida, up in the Panhandle. Miss Richmond's class from Reading, Pennsylvania. Had a really sweet email from a student at Centennial High School in Las Cruces, Mexico, New Mexico. Miss Ferguson's class, and the students at Luther Prep School in Watertown, Wisconsin, who love Bear, apparently. So 5 minutes ago, Bear was right here, but then my college-age daughter, who's home from school at the University of Georgia, she came down and fixed her lunch, and he followed her upstairs, or followed the food upstairs. Maybe he'll be back before the lesson is over. I've done way too much talking. Mr. Escobar, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How's everyone out there? I left the shout outs to you today, Miss Barber. I've been working on the map and it's taking a minute. So I'll have that map updated for next week. But it is great to end the week with you. It's great to end the week with all of you. And rest assured that our work does not end because we spend the weekend thinking about how to improve all these lessons. We hope that we've been able to answer all your questions in the past few weeks. And as we learn more information, as always, we're going to share it with you. But let's get started. Let's dive right into today. And we start with the essay that you wrote last night. We hope that you wrote it last night. It's a challenging one. There's a bunch of characters I think that you had to to balance, and what we decided to do is, instead of sharing a sample essay, and this was the passage, instead of sharing a sample essay with you, we're going to hold off on that because we're actually going to be talking about each of the components of the essay in the sessions to come. We're going to talk about commentary and evidence today, particularly evidence, how to extrapolate the evidence from the passage. But we are going to be talking about thesis statement again, and commentary, and what makes up a great introduction, and how do we finish these essays, and how do we approach the prompt in general. So what we decided to do is, let's do a little spot checking for you guys. We want you to take the essay and we want to go back to this, which we had done maybe April 6th. I don't remember at this point, but we had talked about how the different elements of the essay should come together, and we were talking about line of reasoning. And I never want you guys to lose sight of that phrase and that purpose in essay writing. Everything has to be interconnected. So ideally, we would like for you to highlight your thesis, preferably in the introduction, right? It doesn't have to be one sentence. It could be two sentences, but for an essay this length, it's probably going to be one sentence. So go ahead and highlight your thesis. Then we want you to highlight your claims. We want you specifically your topic sentences in your paragraph. Why bury these uh these claims within the passage? Start off that body paragraph with a statement that you're going to defend and support throughout that paragraph. And do you see a connection between that claim and the thesis statement? Did you borrow ideas? Did you borrow words from the thesis, letting us know that we are in 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 the development of the support of that thesis? And remember that these claims, the way that they should be listed, should make some sense. Paragraph 2, your first body paragraph, appears before paragraph 3 for a particular reason. And if you could state that explicitly for us, that would probably be beneficial to you. Then each of these claims should have evidence. And this is the row that we're going to focus on today. What kind of evidence? How do we read in order to pull the evidence? What are the questions we should ask ourselves? But at the very least for now, you should have some quotations. You should have some references to line numbers. Go ahead and highlight that. And you may want to highlight each of these in different colors so that you can see if something's missing. And then if you go back to one of our videos where Miss Barber showed you how to make connections between all these parts, like literally drawing lines between them, you should be able to do that with your essays. The evidence is probably not going to be the same because you're supporting a different claim. And we want to show some variety in the essay. We also want to know that you read the whole thing and you're not just basing your claims and your thesis, let's say, on the first paragraph of the passage. And your commentary, make sure that you have this. We don't want you to, take a stance in a claim and then provide evidence and then let the evidence speak for itself. Absolutely not. You are the author. You are the one driving this. You're the engine, that thesis statement image we had shown you. Really, you're the driver of that vehicle. And that's where your commentary comes in. But all of these pieces, the commentary, the evidence, the claim, have to go back to your thesis. So if you do us a favor now and take your essay and highlight it and draw these connections between these parts, then we know that you have an essay that includes all the different components that we're going to be talking about throughout the weeks to come. We're not
Yep.
going to be writing
Next,
an essay tonight. So they may
no.
want to rewrite this one if they're missing certain things, like if they didn't put quotations, let's say, or if they don't have commentary. Go ahead and try that out tonight over the weekend, so that starting next week you do have a solid essay with all the parts.
And
Sorry, Miss
next
Barber.
week, no, you're good. Next week, we are breaking this all down. We'll have us one day on writing thesis statements, one day on unpacking a prompt, one day on really what is commentary. How do we tie commentary back to the thesis? How do we establish a line of reasoning? So we're next week we have very specific targeted lessons for each of these components.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited about that. I'm a writing teacher at heart, so writing, oh, it just gets me fired up.
Well, and it gets us closer to the task at hand, right?
Mhm.
Your links back there remind us that each day we're closer to that examination, and that's certainly what the goal is, to be able to write a cogent essay at the end of the day. So for today's goal, we're going to look into what it takes to develop a paragraph that includes the claim and the evidence itself. But what we've decided to do is to take this, and instead of focusing on the three gray boxes that are at the bottom, we're going to focus on the first one. In literary analysis, writers read a text closely to identify details that, in combination, enable them to make and defend a claim about an aspect of the text. Excuse me. The notion here is, if we're not identifying the right things in the passage, then our support, our evidence for our claims might be weaker than we intend for them to be, and thereby our claim may not be as as attractive, right? We our essay won't be convincing enough. If our thesis statement is an arguable one, it's one that's presenting an argument, then we want to have strong claims, and strong claims require the best evidence so that it's undeniable that our interpretation is indeed a plausible interpretation. So instead of focusing on really what kinds of evidence, or how do we write the evidence in, we're going to talk today about how do we pull the evidence from the passages.
Yeah, and I think it's, because the format of the test is different this year. Typically, you would have the essay or the passage in front of you, but now it's going to be on a computer screen. And so that changes things, because probably most of you have been practicing marking things literally on the text and then you go to write. Well, now you will have the option to print. However, that takes time, and we'll talk through all that. You'll have to decide if you want to print and literally annotate on the text. But like, I would not be able to print at my house. So then, I'm thinking, how can we take notes? What's the best way that we can take notes on a passage that we're looking at on a screen, jot down some notes, organize our notes, and get ready to write? So today we just want to talk through some specific strategies to help you annotate or take notes and organize your thoughts when you're reading. So this is very practical. So let's start with this. Mr. Escobar, what is one thing that you've noticed since we started this online project? Tell me one thing you've noticed.
I feel like the student now. You calling on me, and I wasn't ready.
Yes,
One
this
thing
is
I've
a pop
noticed,
quiz.
yeah. One thing I've noticed is uh, that people are coming together. I think that a lot of times we felt that we were going to battle this situation alone, this crisis alone, whether we're talking about the pandemic or we're talking about the impending test. Um, it it seems like we're all in this together, to quote my daughter's Disney song. Um, and that's what I've noticed since we've started.
Here's the next question. How have you seen this? What's your evidence for that?
It's interesting because we are quarantined, right? I haven't left my house in weeks and months probably now. But despite that limitation, I've had more contact and communication with people than I do normally. Right? Normally my limit
It's
my
interesting.
communication is with teenagers, with young people, but I see very few adults. Once I close the door to my classroom, I hardly see the teachers who are my neighbors, but constantly every day 50, 60 emails come in from all over the world. And that's how I know that we are coming together. I had never spoken to someone who lived in Bolivia or Saudi Arabia or Senegal or Japan or right? I mean, it's just
Actually,
incredible.
like a month ago, you and I had not even spoken. That's
Absolutely.
craziness, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, here's my last question for you. Why do you think that's important?
I Students often ask me, Mr. Escobar, are you okay? All your books are sad, right? and and I tell them, the things that make you happy and the things that make me happy are probably very different. You probably want to go out, you want to go to South Beach, you want to go to the movies, I just want to stay home, spend some time with my family, read a good book, maybe at the end of the day watch a movie. Um, but but yet tragedy does bring us together. We understand Hamlet, we understand um, Janie, we understand all these characters, because what makes you sad and what makes you cry is probably the same thing that makes me upset too. And I think that all these people coming together and sending us emails just speaks to our humanity. We
Mm.
seek community. We can't bear isolation. We seek community. And thank God that we now have these capabilities to connect with people all over the world and build community, even if it's from the comfort of your couch, my my
Your library.
office, my
Mhm.
library. Yeah, it's incredible.
Okay, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And what we just modeled for you is the approach that we want you to take with a text. So we want you to ask these three questions. What do I notice? Um, how do I see this? How is the author communicating this? And why is it important? So let's think about the what. When we read a text, what do I see? What stands out to me? And here's some things that you can look for: shifts, contrast, repetitions, similarity. Some similarities, sometimes there are just things that stand out. This happens to me all the time when I'm reading a passage. I'll notice something and I'll think, I know that's important, but I'm not even sure
I don't know
why.
why.
Right,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
but there's weight to this, like, I just know it's important, and, um, and it stands out. So, that's the first thing we want you to focus on when you're reading. What do I notice? Shifts are so important, and contrast, we've spent a lot of time talking about shifts and contrast, but what do I notice? Just what stands out to you? Next is, how is the author presenting these things that stand out to you? This list that I have here, this Brian Stabnick, a friend of mine from Long Island, New York, posted this on in a group I'm in a few days ago, and I love this because these are a lot of the hows that the writer uses. And we've talked about all of these different tools, all of these writer author choices. These are ways into a text for us. These are ways that we can think about and help us make meaning of the text. So this list is not exhaustive, but it is a list of things. We've done lessons on almost all of these things. And so we're kind of transitioning from looking at all of these author choices, literary elements, devices. We've spent a lot of time looking on those. Now we want to be able to bridge and shift into writing, and how are we going to write about them? But the how, what choices are what choices, what choice, how is the author communicating the message? And then they're usually done through these. That's the how. How is the message being communicated? Finally, the last question: why is this important? And we get to these bigger, broader ideas. You know, initially we want to answer the prompt. I mean, we're going to be writing specifically about a prompt, so we want to tie all of that back to the answer, to answer the prompt, and our thesis will be built around that. And also this central or controlling idea, or your interpretation of the text. That's why these things are important. Remember, it's not just about identifying all of the author's choices. It's not just about saying the author uses, one of my students in an essay they wrote this week said the author uses bombastic diction, I think. So and that was great, but it's not just about identifying it, but why is that important? Why this type of diction? Why this type of figurative language? Or why is the character being portrayed this way? What is the setting telling us? We need to just connect that back to a central or controlling idea. So these three things we want you to think of: what do I notice? How is it being portrayed? How is it being communicated? How is the author choosing to reveal this information? Why is it important? But then it gets kind of confusing too, because we have this whole text and we need to be able to break down the text. And my friend Valerie Withers, she gave me this idea. She calls it the BME: the beginning, the middle, and the end. And she has her students chunk the text this way. I really like that because we want to be able to look at the text in smaller chunks, and we've done that. We've talked a lot about chunking the text already, and we'll talk about that more next week as we get into our writing. But this beginning, middle, and end, it just allows you to work with smaller pieces of the text and look for those shifts. A lot of times you see shifts like in the character, shifts in the tone. We looked at the Ludi Johnson text and we saw like the whole first part, the street, we saw the whole first part is the setting. And then the second part is about the character. So maybe not a beginning, middle, and an end, but a beginning and an end. We see this, very clear shift in the text. So I'm thinking about the what, the how, and the why, the beginning and the middle and the end. And I spent yesterday on the phone with one of my friends, Jim Wicks from Dalton High School in Dalton, Georgia. Hello. Um, we started hashing this out and figuring out what type of graphic organizer, what's something our students can use to make notes. And so he helped me come up with this. It's so easy too, but I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. So even if you don't have a printer, I think it's really easy to just make a tic-tac-toe board. Here's the beginning, here's the middle, here's the end. Here's what I notice. Here, how is the author communicating this? Why is this important? This will allow you to quickly take some notes if you don't have a piece of paper that you're actually writing on. I mean, you may not have a printer at home, or you may not want to take the time to print, but this will allow you to jot down some notes, to organize your thoughts quickly, and then get ready to write. So let's apply this. Go
Miss
ahead.
Barber, can I play devil's advocate and ask you a
Play
question that
devil's advocate.
my
Now you're putting
students
me on the spot.
well, I know you know the answer to this because it's a question that our students ask us all the time, right? In 40 minutes, although this year we'll have 45 minutes, but in 40 minutes, my essays are short.
Mhm,
Now, Miss Barber, you want me to not only read and write, but before I start to write, you want me to jot down notes.
mhm.
I'm never going to get to the writing. And I understand why students ask us that question, right? The concern is very real. If I'm writing, let's say,
Mhm.
a full page and then a half a page, and that's all I can muster out in 40 minutes, and now I'm going to take this tic tac toe and fill it in. Am I just going to write a paragraph, right? Because is this going to be so time consuming? And maybe I'll answer my own question since I put you on the spot, and I'll take it back.
Oh
But I
no,
want
I
you to
have an
jump in.
answer.
Oh, okay, you want to go ahead? Because I think it's something we're asked all the time, right? What I wanted to do is, can we go to the reading? We've told them, our audience, that we both have read, we both have scored exams. How many of those essays are long but repetitive, or
Mhm,
long but they're not saying anything, or
mhm.
right? Just because something is lengthy doesn't mean that it has substance to it. And if you're writing a page and a half and you're still being repetitive and you're still not saying much, then maybe write a page and a half, but a smarter page and a half, a more
Mhm.
focused page and a half. So I'm going to throw that at you just because I think that it's probably something students are thinking about right now.
So when I talk to my students about annotating or note taking and outlining, and rest assured, we will talk about outlining next week because it is so important. Um, I get it. Like, you want to jump in, you want to start writing. And I am not suggesting that you're going to fill in all of these boxes 100% thoroughly. However, writing, it takes time, and like, you need a minute for things to percolate in your mind. And honestly, and there'll be some teachers who don't agree with me, you listen to your teacher, but in a 40-minute time setting, I usually coach my students to read, take notes, and outline. Like, let that take at least 10 minutes, if not 15, and then start your writing. Because, like Mr. Escobar said, the more you can plan on the front end, the more purposeful your writing is, and the more you're going to have to say instead of just vomiting words all over the paper.
Absolutely.
And it also, I just think it's so important to give your mind that 10 minutes, that 15 minutes to be thinking on the text before you just have all this word salad on the paper.
Yeah, and I would say that 10 minutes is not enough, right? 12,
15.
15 minutes. Yeah, absolutely. And I've done different things in my classroom, and I'll share it with you guys now because you may want to practice doing this. Um, I've had my students use, let's say, a a pencil to jot down notes, and the pen is on the ground, and they're not allowed to touch the pen for
Hmm.
the first 15 minutes, right? Or two different colors or something, so that I still want them to have a writing instrument because I want them to be able to be annotating on the prompt and doing these graphic organizers or outlines. But I need to control when they start writing the actual essay, because it seems like, if I start handing out papers on the right side of my room, by the time I get to the left, the kids on the right already want to start writing. I'm like, how could you be writing? You probably haven't even delved into the prompt during this time period. So it's important to slow down, and it's not about, you got to get over the fear of, oh, am I going to be able to finish the essay? You will, because
Right,
now you're actually going to have something to say.
right.
How much of the time are you stuck and you're like, oh, where do I go next? Where do I go next? Like, these graphic organizers help you develop your outline, and then the writing is seamless at that point because you know exactly where you're going.
And even if you're not filling all of this out, which you won't have time for that, it helps, it gives you a format to think, you know?
Yeah,
And I mean, I think more important, yes, teaching writing, we want to show you some ways to be a better writer, but writing is born out of thinking and organizing our thoughts. And then we just push our thoughts out on the paper through a pen.
right.
So this is really just as much about training your mind to think when you approach a passage as it is writing about a
Absolutely.
passage. So I think if you approach a text, and we still have plenty of time to practice, if we approach a text thinking, what do I notice? How is this being communicated? Why is this important? Like, we're reading with those questions in our mind all the time. And it becomes easier and easier the more we practice.
So let's see what that looks like, right?
So let's practice.
You wrote on this last night, but let's read the prompt just to remind ourselves of what the task was. The following excerpt is from Elizabeth Gaskell's Mary Barton, a novel about mill workers living in Manchester, England in the 1840s. In this scene, George Wilson, one of the workers, goes to the house of Mr. Carson, the mill owner, to request care for a fellow worker dying of typhus. Read the passage carefully. Then, in a well written essay, analyze how Gaskell uses literary elements and techniques to make social commentary.
So I applied what we talked about to this graphic organizer. I went ahead and chunked the text, and the way I chunked it, I put this whole beginning section. It talks a lot about the setting, and it's very descriptive here. So that became my beginning. And then the middle part becomes the dialogue. That just seemed like a natural shift in the text for me. So this is the beginning section. And then what do I notice? Well, I notice there's a lot of imagery, there's a lot of focus on setting. I'm introduced to two main characters. So when I'm thinking about the what, the how, and the why, in the beginning, it would look like this. Let's see. You want to go to the next one? Yeah. So again, the what I already talked about. How? Well, I see this through the selection of details, and specifically in regard to setting, and I see it also in the contrast. So, and here are just a couple of quotes and that I pulled. And if you were doing this on exam day, you might want to just write down a couple of words or maybe line numbers to reference back to here. Now, why is this important? Well, from the very beginning, we're seeing these two different worlds. The wealthy and the poorer people, and we're seeing this contrast. And remember, I mean, it's there, we're looking for contrast, we're looking for complexity. So from the very beginning, I noticed that. So that's kind of how that would look. Let's check for understanding with the second paragraph. Again, this becomes my middle section, and there's no one right way to do this. You will chunk the text in a way that makes sense to you, because this is about you approaching the text. So this is not the only way to do it, but to me, it made sense to go from all of the description and now to the dialogue. And it's interesting because one thing I notice, even through the dialogue, is I still continue to see the servants, the poorer people, contrasted with the more wealthy people. You know, I was right there waiting. I was told to be there by 12, but it wasn't until 2 o'clock they called. Um, you know, you better, you know, the servants, like telling everybody, be on your best behavior, because now the wealthy in a bad mood has a bad headache. So we go to the chart, and again, I see this continue. I mean, it's like from the very first part. The dialogue, it really reinforces what the contrast that I saw before. Um, so now I see this developing throughout the passage. Does that make sense, Mr. Escobar?
Yeah, perfect sense. We're basically repeating these steps multiple times, right? However you decide that you chunk the passage, then you apply the thinking. What do I see? How is it conveyed? And what is the greater significance to this? And you know, you brought up the Ludi Johnson piece, and at that point, maybe we just split it up 2 times, right?
Exactly.
Whereas in this one, maybe it is 3. And there is no right answer, as you said.
Mhm.
It's There's just the right type of thinking, right? What do I see? How do I see this? And why is it important? So when we debrief, we're talking about the selection of evidence. We're not talking right now about the type of commentary we make about this evidence, but we specifically focus today on how do I how do I extrapolate evidence, particularly with this year's setting, right? We have the prompt on a screen. I'm here in my bedroom. I'm here on my office. I'm here on my living room. I'm on my couch. How do I make notes? The whole year I've been taking these notes. So, what we gave you today was one way of taking notes. Chunk the text, ask what, how, why, and then you're going to be able to go to interpretation. Ms. Barber, you were going to jump in?
Yep. Under the description in today's session, I actually have a PDF of this exact chart, and with a couple of leading questions up front, like how to break down the prompt. Here's a space to outline. Here's your thesis. So that is on the description for today. This is what I would encourage you to do. Make a copy of that. And then revise it to what works for you. Some people use different language, like claim, evidence, and analysis. So if that language works better for you, then you do that. Make a copy of this, change it to something that's going to work for you on exam day, and then start practicing with that between now and exam day. So that's going to be your homework for tonight. What we're asking you to do is to go ahead, and I want you to think about your plan for annotating on exam day. Are you going to print and annotate, or are you going to take notes on a separate sheet of paper? If you're taking notes, what's your note taking plan? So I've given this 3x3 annotation document in the description. Look at that. Does that work for you? If it doesn't, figure out what's going to work for you. Make modifications to this document if you need to. Most importantly, talk to your teacher about it. What we don't want, though, is for you to go into exam day without a plan. The more you can plan on the front end, the more confident you'll be and the more in control of this test you'll be. My friend Lisa Boyd, she always says, and I love this, she says, you're taking the test. The test isn't taking you. You are going to go in and you're going to take the test and you're going to be in command of this. This is on your terms. So we want to help you take this test on your terms and just give you as many tools as we can to help you be confident going into it.
Absolutely. And this is just one, right? I'm sure
This is just one.
there are others, and I love what you said earlier today, which is your teacher's right. If your teacher gave you another approach, then
Exactly.
follow that one. The idea is, let's not lose everything we got from the classroom.
Right.
You spent months and months and months sitting with your teachers. They gave you tools, employ those tools. Let's not be passive test takers. We are in command, we're in control. We just got to develop a game plan for how we're going to attack the beast on exam day, right?
And again, this goes far beyond the test. We do want you to be prepared for the test, but this helps you be a better reader and a better thinker in general. So as I tell my students on day one, I'm like, this class is all about the test and this class is not at all about the test. And we live in that dichotomy all year. So the things I'm telling you, yeah, I want to get you ready for the exam because I want to help you get college credit, but this goes so much further than the exam. I'm sorry, I'm getting off on my soapbox and just acting like y'all are in my
No, no.
class. So if you know of someone who doesn't have access to the internet or a device, reach out to College Board. They are working to make sure everyone has what they need to take um, the test on exam day, which is May 13th. So we are counting down. It is Friday. Thank y'all for a great week. Seniors 2020, we love you. I know it's hard times. I know it's unusual circumstances, but what I'm seeing, oh my gosh, y'all are approaching not just this exam, but these circumstances with heart. And I love what I'm seeing for y'all. So from y'all. So have a great weekend. I think that's it. I'm
Goodbye, everyone.
signed out in Atlanta. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye from Miami.